supply there. But at the moment, we're seeing the oil price dip down again, but I don't think that's going to happen for very long.
Right, let's get the inside track now on a piece of technology which underpins so much of what we all take for granted in modern life.
Satellites have a whole host of different applications, including weather forecasts, navigation, connecting to the internet. In recent years, advances in construction techniques have resulted in the production of smaller units, which are more cost-effective to launch.
The small satellite market is forecast to grow at an annual rate of 20%, reaching $7.5 billion by the year 2022.
Now, Sky and Space Global is a UK-based startup hoping to capitalise on this trend. It plans to become the first company to use satellites to provide affordable communication services to people around the equator.
Well, joining us is Sky and Space Global's Chief Executive Officer, Meer Moualem. Welcome to Business Live. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
So, my first question is, how do these satellites differ from what's already out there and already doing the job that keeps us connected and so on?
Well, first of all, they're much smaller. So they're about this size, or this size, or this size, less than 10 kilograms each. And due to the fact that technology has advanced so much in recent years, you know, everything is being miniaturized. So you can put on board these satellites the same kind of components that provide the same services as, you know, very large, very big satellites.
Sorry, and they're going around the equator, basically. Why particularly there?
Well, our first satellites are traveling across the globe in a polar orbit, but you're right, our constellation, our commercial constellation will be around the equator because that's where the market is. That's where there are people with no infrastructure, without any ability to perform a simple thing as a phone call that we take for granted, because nobody's developing the infrastructure over there. And also, it's much easier to deploy satellites over the equator. I won't go into the technical details of satellite orbits, but you need less satellites. So with 200 satellites, we provide a 24/7 coverage of the equatorial region.
I mean, we mentioned telecommunications, phones and so on. What's the most unusual or surprising thing that these satellites do in terms of the technology they provide?
Well, I think the most surprising thing is that they can do phone calls, texting and data transfer at extremely low cost. So today it would cost you an arm and a leg if you want to use a satellite phone. You pay hundreds of pounds for the phone itself and around £1 per minute, or per, you know, sending just a simple thing as a text message. But because these satellites are so low cost to produce and to launch to space, for example, our first 3 were $500,000 to put in space. That means building them, launching them, and capital for the company itself. For 200 satellites, less than $150 million. That's almost nothing in terms of space industry.
How did you start off? Because you've got quite an interesting way in which you started the business and then how you raised the money.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So me and my partners are Israelis originally. So we thought about how can we build a successful business based on nanosatellites, affordable communication, etc. We approached VCs and private investors, you know, the kind of a usual track that any entrepreneur goes through when he is establishing his startup. But we found ourselves doing an IPO in the Australian Stock Exchange on day one.
Why Australia?
Yeah.
Why Australia?
It's an interesting story. There was a group of Australian finance people in Israel looking for interesting companies, and they heard about us. They wanted to meet with us. We said, no, it's not worth the trouble. It's Australia. Nothing will come out of it. And we met with them for lunch. They loved the story. They said, we can provide you the funding that you require through the ASX. It was very hard to make the decision because usually, you know, you're doing some kind of a seed money, round A, round 2, and doing an IPO 5-6 years down the line.
Going straight to public and saying, give us your money.
And it has been a very successful story in Australia. We've done 3 very successful IPOs. Our share price went up from 2 cents up to 20-something cents within less than a year. So we're very happy about that. And if you think back, it was probably a good decision to do that.
And why do you think, you mentioned your background Israeli, why do you think Israel has become this kind of pioneer in this kind of tech development?
Well, in Israel, you know, Israel is called a startup nation, and there's a reason for that. There's a kind of an ecosystem that encourages people to think kind of outside the box, come up with new ideas. But we decided to establish our business here in the UK and not in Israel. The reason is that UK has decided to become a leading figure in the global space industry. And there's a lot of support here. There's a very good ecosystem for space companies here. The UK is a global force, so to speak, as far as regulations are concerned. So we're very happy that we're here and part of the UK space industry.
Do you see enough new talent coming through in terms of skills that people are being trained up, or is there a shortage of that in any sense?
There's not shortage, but it's not easy to find good people, I believe, like in any other industry. So there are engineers being educated here in the UK. It's always difficult to find good people, but that's the same in every business and in every sector that you're looking for.
Ben Oylen, thank you very much indeed for coming.
Thank you very much
for talking to us
having
about
me.
your business.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, in a minute, we're going to have another look through the business pages, but first, it's a quick reminder of how to get in touch with us.